back one more time.
Yes,
They can't get rid of us. They can't get rid of us.
No, we're still here.
They can't get rid of us. Someone told me a little secret, and it was like, this episode we need to talk about being black.
Yep. This is the black episode.
You get talk about. You get this where you thrive. This is like when you do your thing.
I mean, I am black.
I'm throwing the magic your way.
I'm black in America. I mean, it's
You've been black in America for a while. I think on one of our previous episodes we said, black people only been free about 30, 40 years. So black people only been free as long as you live.
That's
so
true. True. And I think, I've been thriving, I've been living and trying to navigate it, and it's lots to talk about.
So you got dimes to drop for people.
I think so. I think you do too, because we forget you and your co-founders are running a nonprofit that is, the presence is 3 young black men. It's a nonprofit, so we're not going to say it's owned by black people, but it's a nonprofit managed by 3 young black men. So, I mean, hello. Lots to say around that. Too.
True.
So you have a lot to offer and talk about too.
All right, so all right, let's see what people can get from it. I think that I guess just thinking about black businesses and going off of where you just were with the 3 black co-founders running a nonprofit, like, it's important to support black businesses, right?
Yeah,
like
it is.
It's not many of us.
No, it's not. And I think, not only is it not many, but the success rate of those that start and are able to continue to thrive over a long period of time, that number is low. When we look at the numbers across, from start to end, the black companies that are continuing to thrive 10, 15, 20, beyond that years, they're far and few. So, and then now, with the height of COVID-19, we're seeing that a lot of those successful businesses have had to close their doors because they weren't able to sustain their businesses. And then follow that up with the fact that we've had the CARES Act, which had, trillions of dollars to keep businesses thriving, for like the Paycheck Protection Program and others. And many of those weren't able to qualify to even receive that. But you guys were. So we should talk about that. We should talk about the fact that we should start with, I'm going to put you on the spot. Let's throw it your way, because really, I think there's a lot to be said about the fact that you guys started this company, what was it, 4 years ago now? 4 years ago, right? You started it. You started a nonprofit.
2 of our companies actually got CARES Act money.
Oh, good partners and good projects.
Yeah.
Okay, so 2 companies.
Danny Wright, baby. Hey.
Financial extraordinaire.
Actually, I can't even say fun fact. This is a horrible fact, but only 95% of black businesses did not get PPP funding.
Right. That's a lot.
That is crazy.
That number is astronomical.
It's not that many of us.
I know.
95% of us did not get PPP loans.
Money.
And it's supposed to go towards small businesses?
Yep. So there's a problem. There's a huge problem.
This administration throwing smoke screens in front of us.
Yeah.
It's like watching like a cartoon.
We need to unpack that. We need to talk about what the problems that happened there to get us to the point of all these companies being ineligible. So some of them weren't even denied. They couldn't even qualify. They couldn't even qualify to be able to apply to get a denial. They were just flat out ineligible from the start.
I'm not going to take us through a history lesson real quick, but when we talk about, and this goes back to one of the other episodes that we've had, but when we talk about having a seat at the table, like, this is a prime example of that, because when you have a seat at the table, when someone like you or I have a seat at the table, let's say at one of these administrations, or when one of these congressional leaders is actually talking through the criteria of administering a program like this to give money to small businesses, that's where someone like me says, hey, this stipulation for someone to get funding isn't right? So like, when we look at it, and we looked at PPP funding, I saw it when I was applying. And they said that if you ever a felon or had ever been arrested, on certain charges, like, you couldn't get funding. And I immediately thought to black people, because I'm like, when we think about the war on drugs, when we think about mass incarceration, when we think about the history
issues,
right? Like, in the history of this country, so many of us have not been able to. It hinders us from getting jobs, and then, as you see, it hinders us from getting funding when we have a business, right? And like,
Yep.
And so many people don't understand the cyclical nature of these systemic issues and how they relate
how they show up. They show up.
And no
later.
one sees it, right? Like no one
Yep.
sees it. I haven't heard anyone talk about that, right?
Yeah.
Like
and
it's a problem.
Out. Yep.
Well, so when we say why does 95% of black businesses not get PPP funding? Well, one, a lot of black business owners, you know, have been arrested in some
challenges with the law in some
right?
capacity.
In some capacity, because
Yep.
that is how our country has set up our systems and our laws
Yep.
to keep black people down, right?
Yep.
And then from that same instance, like that automatically probably knocked out a good portion.
Right. Yep.
You know?
And then we talked about this on a previous episode, that relationship, having a relationship with your bank, having an established relationship with your bank. That was one thing that helped you all. Like along the way, you had relationships with the banks that you all did business with. So even if, but you know, we still have that strike there. That strike is still, you know, evident if you had challenges with the law, and that kind of, you know, strikes you out.
Because I can think
even
about
understanding other ways to if there was a way to get around that for other programs, you'd have to have a relationship with your bank to be able to know what those are.
Yeah. And it just doesn't make any sense to me. And I don't want to take us off topic and start going into mass incarceration and locking black people up.
Like why is that question even asked?
But like,
why is it even asked?
When committing a crime, whether you did it or not, whether it's because of the law or not,
right.
does not constitute a life sentence.
Exactly.
Or being strapped down and handicapped for the rest of your life.
Yep.
Once you serve your time, you should be able to live.
But in a lot of instances, it does, and it impacts black people.
And I can think, you know, immediately to the Georgetown Pivot Program, which is a program, you know, run through the business school at Georgetown University, where, you know, it's this program to teach career building skills and help individuals that have been incarcerated. When they return, it helps them, one, like I said, career building skills, and then two, start their own businesses. And all of them are amazing individuals that are really striving to get their lives together. And this program's been going on for 2 years. And when I think about all of them that may or may not have started businesses 2 years ago, they couldn't get funding this year.
Right.
And they served their time.
That's a great example of it.
Put in time and work to get their to get certifications, to go through school, to start their businesses, and then you can't get funding.
Yep.
And so when we talk about like the value of black businesses and why it's so important to support black businesses, it's one, just looking at the systemic issues that you know we face in this country in general.
Yep, from the start.
From the start.
Yeah, from the start.
And that has nothing to do with, that's not even going into like black buying power or what we do for the economy,
it's just about how
or what we do for hiring.
Yeah, and this is a way to help us, to help people sort of overcome some of those systemic issues that have been set up from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And it just, you know, that example that you just mentioned, having someone go through all those steps to establish a business and then have this huge hurdle now. How do you overcome that? You know, that's sort of the plight of a lot of black people in this country right now that want to establish businesses and need the help. So so back to you guys, because I know you were able to, you founded the business, you were able to set up relationships with banking. What other kinds of, I would say, you know, because I know we want to unpack some of the challenges and some of the impediments, and we want to talk about black buying power and the black dollar and all of that. But I want to make sure people hear sort of a success story and sort of the good news stories about how you guys were able to kind of find a path and some of the support that you might have received in order to do that, because you were faced with challenges, I think, just like any other organization that has started out. But I think some of the things that you guys did was you sought out contracts that helped, you know, young inner city kids in DC. You found funding opportunities that were set aside for community organizations to support programs and things like that. So, you know, maybe from some of that, you know, I think those are things that people will want to know, because a lot of people want to get started and they're experiencing these hurdles and these challenges, and you guys have been able to overcome, I think, quite a lot.
And in my mind, it comes down to two things. One, adaptability, and two, endurance.
Yeah.
Right? So when I speak about adaptability, you know, we have we may only have 1 or 2 programs running at any given point in time now, because we cut a lot of contracts and we're focused on one community. But I understand when I'm writing grants or going for contracts that those 1 or 2 programs can relate to a multitude of different funding streams, even if we don't say it outwardly, on the onset. And what I mean by that is there are a multitude, like when we talk about the social determinants of poverty, right? Like that comes down to hunger, that comes down to healthcare, that comes down to mental health, that comes down to a multitude of different issues. And so we may only have a kids program, doing academics, after school for kids, but in our program, because we feed the kids, that addresses hunger.
Yep.
Because we are ensuring that we're looking at their IEPs, like we're addressing their mental health concerns.
IEP is
individualized education plans, right? Because we are doing COVID testing and making sure they're wearing masks now, we're addressing healthcare, right? And
the financial part because it's free.
It's free, and academics is education. So we do one simple program, and I understand as a business owner that crosses a multitude of different fields. And so, what I think one of the biggest challenges that not even just Black people but business individuals as a whole don't always understand is how to make their business relate to the funding that's available, or to pivot, when that happens. So another prime example, right? My dad has a construction company, right? He does development, he does construction, he does remodeling, et cetera, et cetera. But because he is, a minority business owner, and he has a CBE, a certified business entity through DC government, when COVID happened, there was a bunch of contracts that went out to do like COVID response, right? Because he's already in the database to be, as a minority business owner, an easy pivot for him, not even a pivot, but
transition to
COVID cleaning. So he immediately started, he applied for I helped him to apply for this quick COVID cleaning contract, right? Because his guys already know how to clean, because when they do remodeling, they clean up the space, right? So like that's easy. That's something that he does that isn't his prime business,
right?
But it's an easy, quick pivot. And then boom, next thing you know, he has hundreds of thousands of dollars in a contract during COVID, because he was able to be adaptable and he was able to think, to look at his business and their operations from, an external lens, I would say, to say, how can I manipulate this or make this fix or stand in these 2 factors, of the funding streams. And so that's 1, adaptability. 2, endurance, right? And here's another good example. When we looked at the presidential debate, the vice presidential debate, a couple weeks ago, one of the things they kept saying is when the commentators afterwards said, like, when you're in a debate, you have to keep saying your point over and over again throughout the debate, because one, some viewers are talking to people, they're in and out, like people are going to miss it, right? And when I think about business and I think about applying to different funding streams, it's the same thing. We have been, at Good, we have been relatively successful because we repeat our story, right? Like what we're doing, how we're impacting our kids, and why it's important, right? Over and over again. We don't get tired of having that same conversation, regardless of whether we're talking to a funder, regardless of whether we're talking to a government official, regardless of whether we're on social media, right?
And the story.
That's what it is.
It's like the soundtrack playing.
And I can think about, my friends over at Kitu Coffee, Super Coffee, the DeSico brothers.
Right.
Every single time they're on an interview, or when you look at their newsletter, when you look at their social media, it's always they have really cultivated a brand around the 3 brothers, right? Even when they send their emails, it's like, Jim DeSico, and his signature will say Jim DeSico, first brother. Jake DeSico, second brother. Jordan DeSico, third brother, right? Like they have created that story around them being brothers, beyond like the fitness and the healthy living. And so when it comes down to black businesses, right, taking it back to our point, black businesses, we have to be unapologetically strong with talking about our story, talking about why we're doing what we're doing. Whether that's you started your business because the job market sucked, you started your business because there was unconscious bias. In the case of 67 Naturals, you started your business because you wanted to create a healthy skincare product for your sons. Talk about your story, because what I've learned when it comes down to black businesses, we all have unique stories of why we started what we started.
Always. And I think sometimes we do tend to suppress that.
Yeah.
And one reason why I think we do it is because it's so personal to us. But the personal part of that
it's what makes people buy into it.
People will buy into your story because it pulls on it, not just to pull on their heartstrings like it's an intentional move to do that, but people are emotionally driven. They're emotionally driven, and they want to like you. They want to like you and like your product and like what you're about. So I think it is important for us to, as black people, tell people what our stories are. And I think one of the things you mentioned was an excellent point. Over and over and over again. Not one time, when we publish a newsletter, not one time when we're interviewed, over and over and over again. So people understand this is why we exist. This is why we're motivated. This is what we want to do. And people will remember that story, and they will remember that they are aligning themselves to a product that really was homegrown based on your experience. And
you put love into it. When we talk about cooking, I remember back in the day when we used to talk about pop-up cooking on like Thanksgiving or holidays, and his sweat would go into the food. And he'd be like, "That's love."
That's love.
Right? That's love. We put love into our products.
Right.
We put love into our brands. Right? Like that's what we do.
Yep.
That's what we do. Right? And so it's very important for black businesses to share that authenticity, with any one of our consumers or clients.
So then is never getting tired of doing that.
Yeah.
Don't ever tire of doing that. Do it over and over and over.
And build up your capacity to do that, right? Yeah. Because you aren't going to just start out with that endurance.
Right.
It's like I've said this before. It's like working out.
Yeah.
The first time you go running, you can be a little tired mile one, right? But if you keep doing that week by week, day by day, in a couple of weeks, you'll be at around 5 miles, and that first mile is going to be easy.
Yeah.
But you have to build up that capacity. You have to build up your endurance when it comes down to talking about the story of your business, and talking about why your business matters, why people should support you, why your business is valuable, because we don't get the credit that we deserve as black business owners. We just the way our society is.
Yep.
It's people don't understand the plight of a black person.
Right.
That's just plain and simple.
That's true.
That's just plain and simple.
And like we just talked about, we have to do it too. We have to speak loud and proud about, our personal experiences and why we came to be when it comes to establishing our businesses. And I think it's important to say that and brand yourself against that.
Yeah.
So,
just thinking about the challenge, we have as black people, we have so many challenges already stacked up against us just in life.
Yep.
And so being a black business owner, those challenges don't get any easier just because you started your own business. In fact, they get a little harder.
Yeah.
Right?
And even at the onset, starting your business is hard in itself because, we know, the studies and statistics show that oftentimes black people are starting their businesses with their own money, with their own savings, or with credit cards. They're borrowing from their credit cards. And
black people are less likely to have friends and family that can give to them.
Right, and we
start their
know
businesses.
Other cultures have mothers and fathers that have put money away that can say, hey, here's a couple of whatever thousands of dollars to help you start their businesses. We have not been able to establish that sort of precedence for our families. So a lot of times when we're starting businesses, we're starting them from scratch on our own.
I'm going to go back to the point that I made before. Black people only been free for about 40 years.
Right.
Right.
We
only been free for about 40 years, so we don't got generational wealth
we do not.
a lot of other cultures.
Yep.
We just don't.
Yep.
Yep.
So we're starting from we're starting at the ground, at the bottom.
But we're on
level.
the up and up. we're coming.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. We've had more black businesses in the past, I would say from 2017 to 2020, booming, thriving, much more than ever before. Now we know that there's been a significant hit with COVID. Nobody saw that happening.
About 40% of black businesses have closed during COVID so far.
Yeah, which is like that number alone. Yeah.
It's heartbreaking.
It's heartbreaking. The thing is, when we talk about, there's so many campaigns about Buy Black. There's hashtag Buy Black Day, week. We have all these kind of spotlights on buying black. But what, I want to make sure people understand, it's not buying black just because, it's cool. We have racial inequality. We should be supporting black people, for all the other races out there. It's not just about it in that sense. It's really about doing it for the betterment of the economy. So if you continue to make a choice to support non-black businesses, and black businesses are not continuing to be able to thrive and flourish, then you're causing more of a dent in, what do we have, 13 to 14% of black people in this country, for over 40 million people. You're causing a bigger dent in not just the racial inequality piece, but look at all the social programs that we're going to need to put in place for all of these people who are not able to thrive and be successful in employees, business owners. So the downstream effect is, if you don't choose to buy black, if you don't choose to support black businesses are going to continue to fail. If they continue to fail, that means people don't have money. When people don't have money, there's a huge financial disparity that we're creating, even more profound than what we have today. Yeah. So what happens when you have people in this country that don't have money to be able to sustain the lives of themselves and their families? What happens? We have to develop programs to help them. We cannot sustain this country with just taking a blind eye and just letting people just fall to the wayside. We know that programs will continue to need to pop up and to be supportive of people that don't have the financial influence within their communities to be able to sustain their lives. So that's the downstream effect. So buying black is not just cool. Yep. Buying black helps our society to thrive and grow.
54% of new jobs last year came from small businesses.
Yep. So
a good portion of which was black.
When you're buying black, you are supporting new businesses and supporting their ability to thrive and grow, but you're also creating jobs. All of this stimulates the economy. All of this helps all of us. Yeah. It doesn't just help black people, it helps everyone.
It does.
So,
and a lot of people just don't understand just the challenges of, black people. Like I said, black people are more likely to be in debt, right?
Yeah.
Like from student loans, from
bills, starting out.
When it comes down to access to capital, black people get higher interest rates. I want to say recently I was looking at another study about a little bit more than 50% of black businesses were denied loans compared to 25% of white businesses. That's significant.
Yeah,
when it comes down to really to being able to jumpstart your business, to jumpstart the economy, like that difference should not be there. And it comes down to unconscious bias. It comes down to, the way, our systems and structures and laws and policies are set up, and just, how people view, one another. It's just really unfortunate.
And then on the education piece, like you said, so black people that are starting out businesses are already starting out in debt, personal debt. And some of that is because of student loans. So black people now are more educated than ever before. We have more college educated people in this country than we've ever had. So we have more college educated people that can have access to more, so that they can establish businesses, because we're learning, we're discovering new avenues for income. But then we hit this wall to start a business because we can't get a loan, or we can't raise capital from investors. There's all these doors that are closed. So then what? So this is what keeps happening. These problems keep being perpetuated, where black people jump, a number of hurdles to get to a point where we want to be. But then here's some other doors or some other hurdles in our way. So when you think about the number of businesses that are starting out and like we said, using savings or credit cards and other ways to start their business, they already have this baggage of debt that they still have to pay off when it comes to education and maybe credit card expenses and other things, and perhaps personal loans. Like you said, when we can actually get those loans, the interest rates are astronomical. So being able to manage all of that.
How many experiences have you had with like high interest rates and some of that the borrowing?
Yeah. Oh, for me in the beginning, it was just ridiculous. It was it was ridiculous. So for me, when I finally got to the place of applying for credit cards or applying for auto loans and things like that, when I first started out in my early years, every interest rate for anything that I applied for was high because I didn't have established credit. So that was one of the challenges for me as a young person. I know that can happen to anyone, but then I also had student loan debt too. So I had limited credit, and then I had some debt that I was already carrying with me. So one of the avenues that I decided to take as a young person was to acquire loans from credit unions, because credit unions at the time, this is in the 90s, some of the credit unions for the jobs that I had better interest rates. But even for me being a young person without having good established credit, my interest rates were still higher than they should be. And that's the story, I think, for a lot of people. And I know it's not just Black people that experience that, but if you couple that with, if you're in a position where you want to start a business and you want to go a different route other than the traditional 9-to-5, you have that as an impediment. So I had to get financially savvy and a little bit more literate around things like refinancing so I could get a lower rate eventually, and doing low interest sort of balance transfers and low interest credit cards so that I wasn't paying crazy 18% interest rates and things like that. That's how my life actually started. So as a young person, graduating college and trying to navigate my life, I didn't have any, real financial literacy that I learned from my parents. We didn't have those conversations.
A lot of young people don't know that you can request a lower interest rate after you have a credit card for a certain amount of time. But another thing is it's important to get a credit card. Like I think that the way the world works, like we are so afraid of credit cards, and it's unfortunate because a lot of Black people lack financial literacy because it isn't taught in school as well. Like, and unless you're in like some type of program, that's teaching it, you don't know that, especially if your parents never really had it, right? But understanding that being a credit card owner at a young age, early 20s, not saying get it as a teen or anything like that, but like once you get a job, it's important because the expenses that you regularly would have, if you're budgeting well and you're paying it off every month and you're keeping up with it, you need that. It's important to build your credit.
It is, and that's the part that you have to learn though, that you don't know. That's the part that I didn't know. I didn't understand, I'm have a credit card and I'm just buying stuff, and I know of course I have to pay it back, but I'm not thinking about the timing of paying down those expenses.
And some credit cards they don't charge you the interest if you're paying it
exactly
monthly,
and you have to know. If so you I have
two.
That,
so personally, I have two credit cards. Right, one credit card, if I'm paying on it monthly, even if I don't pay the whole balance, I don't get hit with the interest. The month. The other credit card I have, they hit the interest because it's one of those expensive credit cards. So regardless of that, if I'm not paying it off every month, that interest hitting every month, right? And so I understand the two of those, so I know that I'm more likely to pay this one down that got all this, the interest is hitting me than the other one. Right. And also understanding that after you have it for a certain amount of time, you can call them and contact them and get your interest rate lower.
That goes back to the power that we don't always know that we have because we don't have that level of understanding. So, so along with understanding that you can apply for a credit card, and if of course you have a job, you have income and things like that, you can qualify, but you need to understand sort of those rules. You need to understand and kind of teach yourself around the literacy part of it, especially if you don't know. And like I said, if you were like me and I didn't come from an environment where we talked about that kind of stuff, I wasn't taught that. It wasn't something I knew. I had to figure it out as I went. I made a lot of wonderful mistakes that thankfully I was able to repair myself over time, but initially I didn't have a clue. I was just winging it and trying to figure it out. So so it's not just about knowing that you can have access to credit and building that up for yourself, but things like that, knowing what the interest rate really means, payoffs, understanding all of that, and getting that rigor kind of built into how you understand it along the way is important.
And that kind of goes back to, you know, one of the points we made on one of the early episodes, and just really investing in, you know, yourself and your knowledge and your development. And I think that, you know, when we look at Black business owners as well, you know, it comes down to really investing in the development of your business.
Yeah.
Right? Because we have to, you know, you've often heard the term or the phrase that you have to be twice as good when you're Black.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the same, you know, for business owners. Like, Black business owners have to be twice as good.
Yeah, you know, one point about that too is, you know, back in the day when people thought about creating a business, if they had a business idea and they were like, I want to start a business. If you go to the Small Business Administration website or any website that talks about creating a business, one of the first things they talk about and they really harp on is writing a business plan.
Yeah.
And so, the writing a business plan is important, but you know, if you don't put it into context, you might spend years writing your business plan and not doing the work of trying to establish your business. So the business plan part is still important, but the other things that are really, really important are things like thinking about how you're going to go about marketing your business. If you're going to have a business that has an online presence versus a physical presence, or you're going to be providing certain services, how do you need to reach people? What kinds of investment are you going to make so that people understand what your business is and so that they're interested? You can write that business plan and you can work that business plan for months, and that's cool. But that marketing piece sometimes might look this big, and you really need to put some time into thinking about, you know, I have this great idea for a business. Who's my audience and how do I get to them? The how do I get to them part is the part that I think sometimes is missing. Yeah. You know, the business plans talk and have heavily documented information on making sure you know who your audience is, making sure you know who your consumers are, and who's going to want to buy your product. That's fantastic. You can figure that out in an hour. Like, that doesn't take a lot of time to figure out, but how are you going to get to them? We just talked about the fact that there's 40 million plus Black people. How many is it in the United States? I don't know, 300 million, whatever the total number is of people.
Yeah, over like 330.
Something like that, 330 million. So if there's 330 million people in the US, how do you get to all of them? Like, you have to really think that big. You have to think like, I want to establish a business. Of course, you have to put a lot of effort and time into the money part and the investment part and how you know, acquire the resources that you need to help. But how are you going to get to all these people? Like, how do you, because we talk about, we want people to buy Black, but they also need to know who we are and what we're offering. How do we get to them so that we influence their wants and their need and their desire to buy Black? Because it's not just about, I don't want you to just buy Black just because I'm Black. I want you to buy Black because our products are fantastic, because we have services that are wonderful, because we're on equal footing when it comes to the products that we provide and we rival other companies. Try us because we have products that are just as good. Don't just do it just to do it. I want you to really pay attention to the fact that Black people are making products and providing services that are just as awesome. Yeah. So it's really about encouraging people to make a choice. How do you encourage them to make the choice? You have to put yourselves out there so they can actually see what we're offering. So as much effort as you're putting into establishing the business, you really need to be thinking about how do you market to everybody in this country.
When we talk about just buying Black in general and other races supporting Black businesses, you know, I think it comes back to Black people supporting Black businesses, right? Because, you know, as Black people, we have about $1.2 trillion in buying power. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money, right? Like, we spend more money than any other demographic or population in this country on transportation, apparel, housing,
beauty and hair care,
hair products, right? And so we have to support our own people. We have to support our own Black businesses, right? Because once we begin to do that, then we'll help our businesses flourish. And then once Black businesses are flourishing more, as we've already said, we are hiring more minorities. We are boosting the economy. Black people are spending more money. I'm not sure if that's the best thing, but we're spending more money, right? Like, we're spending more money than any other race on just general products.
Yeah.
On sound equipment, TV, radio.
Yep,
entertainment.
Yep.
And going back to one of the points that you made earlier about, black people becoming educated, and going back to that 40-year dynamic, about 54% of black people are millennials, 34 years old and younger. What does that mean? That means the growth potential of our buying power is about to be
huge. Yeah, it's huge.
Astronomical.
It's huge. And, putting that money back, like you said, it's 1 point whatever trillion dollars is just the amount of money that we're spending is just astronomical. But if we're paying attention to where we're spending our money and we're buying black and putting some of that money back into the pockets of black businesses, then we'll find, when we talked about, what was it, 40% of businesses failed, how many of those businesses were being supported by all of these trillions of dollars that black people are spending money.
Probably not
exactly
many.
So it's things like, so we have to look at the end to end. There's a lot there with respect to companies that are starting, out of the gate, black owned companies, who's actually buying their products and services, and where we as consumers are selecting the goods that we're buying and who we're buying it from. We have the ability to create a huge shift. We have control of that because of just the volume of money that we have going out there, and where we're buying and where we're supporting businesses.
It's interesting because for so long, when I would hear people like, influencers or like entertainers or celebrities like P. Diddy or Jay-Z talking about like buying black and supporting black businesses, like I didn't understand it until I began to do my own research. And I think it also comes down to us doing research, not only just around black businesses as a whole, but just really understanding the power of our dollar, the power of our habits, the power of the things we do on an everyday basis, and how it really makes this country run.
It makes this country go. And really, like you said a moment ago, we're spending all of this money and we're helping businesses that don't always look like us. And the bad part about that, the real challenge for that issue is it doesn't go back into our community.
Yeah, it doesn't.
So we're spending money elsewhere, and it's our choice. We're choosing to do that, and then that money doesn't come back to black communities, and we're seeing devastation across our black communities.
And I would say that's probably one of the best parts of this year and all of these social justice movements and the BLM movement. You're seeing companies now, say that they're going to invest in black communities and in racial equity and all these different things, but now because everything is heightened and on a platform, we can hold them accountable.
Yeah.
And it's time for us to hold the companies that we give our money to accountable.
No, I think that's a great point. There are a lot of companies that are actually, publicly saying a percentage of our profits are going to social programs, and all of this, happened due to the death of George Floyd, the protests, Breonna Taylor, and a number of other significant, impactful issues that have happened to black people in this country this year. And the second part of that, so part one is fantastic. You're going to invest in social programs. You're going to put some of that money into black communities and things like that. The second part is where, when, how. We want to see it. We want to know where it's going. We want to actually, like you said, hold them accountable. We need to see more. So it sounds good. I see the message on the website, but I actually want to see where it's going. I need more information about that, because if I'm spending money there, I want to actually know that it's going exactly where these companies are saying that where it's going. Because a lot of the companies are reacting to everything that's happening, and I think it's great that they are being socially responsible and holding themselves accountable for doing so. But we really need to see that the words are going to a specific purpose and not just words on the website.
When we talk about us seeing those things, I was doing a little more research, and black people are more likely to be on social media.
Yeah.
Black people are more likely to trust advertisement.
Yep.
And our younger population is more likely to be technologically savvy
yes.
and try more technology products
yep.
than any other race.
Yep.
And so what does that mean? It goes back to one of the points you made earlier about, black businesses really understanding how to target and market themselves, because if we're doing that appropriately and if companies are doing that appropriately, we know where to look, right? Like
yep.
we're on social media more than anyone else.
Yep.
We're looking at the news. We're getting our information fed to us, from all these different technological platforms.
Yeah.
And so what does that mean? That means that we also need to do our due diligence to say, this company's not it.
Right. Because not only are we on social media, we're actually talking about the purchases that we're making. We're advertising products for free. We're doing all kinds of stuff to make these companies go. So we're making the country go. We're making the product owners go. We're giving them support. We're giving them financial support. We are socializing, the products and the offerings that they're providing. And we probably need to be a lot smarter about how we do that, because we have so much power, behind our dollar and our presence on social media, and how we, who and how we support these companies. So I think we need to be more intentional, and we need to be smarter about how we do that. And like we said a few minutes ago, it really all comes down to choice. We're talking about black people choosing. We're talking about white people choosing. We're talking about all races choosing to really approach their spending in a different way.
Yeah.
And I really think that's the big point. It's all a choice. Nobody's making us buy what we buy. We're choosing to select who we support and who we purchase from. And we can be smart about those choices.
And so I guess that comes to another question I have. How do we get black businesses? Well, I guess if we begin to support more in black businesses, then in turn, black businesses will support more in our community. And you made a point about that earlier, about how, we support all these companies that aren't investing back in our community. And, if we are able to put more dollars into our own hands, that then turns into us being able to support our own communities, creating programs for ourselves. I mean, I know so many black business owners here in DC, that give food away for free, that buy clothing for kids, that support different programs, that do things around the holidays. And, it's unfortunate, but a lot of these larger white companies, like even some of the biggest ones that have funding, aren't doing that. Like a piece of it is they don't know where to go or what to do. Another piece of it is they have so many policies and stipulations around their giving that they aren't actually, actually aren't giving, they aren't having an impact.
Yeah.
And there's just something about understanding your own people that makes black businesses give, to our communities more.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important.
Yeah, it is. And I think that, there's some companies that have, it kind of reminds me of what we're seeing now trending about buying black, #BuyBlack. There are some companies that dedicate like a day or dedicate a program and things like that. And, in the black community, because because we come from these environments that haven't been supported financially in the same way, it makes us naturally want to give back to our communities. But I think that we have to find ways to encourage non-black companies to do that too. Yeah. Because right now the black businesses are still the minority. There's still a small drop in the bucket when it comes to these larger, corporate companies, and even other small businesses that are not black. So we need to find ways to encourage other companies to do that. So it's so much bigger than buying black. And it's so much bigger than a Buy Black Day. Yeah. It's so much bigger than that. We really need to think about
or a blackout day on social media.
We have to pay attention to
we're not gonna buy that, like all those
right.
Little, it's more so than that.
It's about the economy.
Yeah.
What are we going to do about the economy?
And I think that's what's probably so frustrating, for me when I look at some of the policies that our government instills and some of the rhetoric that's spewed out on TV and on the media. It's like, you all should be pushing for black businesses to thrive, for black people to thrive.
Because
if you pick up your lowest or neediest, I don't want to say neediest isn't even the right word, but like your populations of people, not saying just black people, but minorities in general,
where it may be, right?
Then you can make this country thrive. By 2050, there will no longer be a majority race in this country. White people won't be the majority no more. And so it behooves them, like is that how I say it? Behooves?
Yeah, I think
I said it right. I just want to make sure I said it right. I don't know.
You said it right.
Right, but like it behooves government officials to figure out ways to invest in minority and black institutions and communities and businesses more now for the betterment of our country. If you really care about America, then you will. Right. That's what you would do.
It's an economic equality plan. It's a plan to bring all of the cultures, races, the financial gaps that we have, bring it up to an even playing field. Yeah. That's really what it's about. That will then bolster the economy. You cannot have a superior economy with the financial gap, the wealth gap.
With different subsets of people struggling.
You can't. Because like I said in the beginning, what the downstream effect is when you want this economy to boom, you're not gonna have that, because over here you're going to have a number of programs that you're going to have to put in place for the set of impoverished people. It's just you cannot get away from it. That's why
I love Robert Smith's plan of corporations giving a percentage of their bottom line, towards black communities and reparations.
Yeah.
Like the topic of reparations, is so important because, again, we've only been free for 40 years, right? And I can't remember the exact numbers, but I want to say it's been about over $14 trillion have come was of the United States economy or institutions were built on the backs of slaves. About $14 trillion worth of value. I think it may be a little more than that. But, they're crucifying Robert Smith now, right? The richest black man. They got him under the IRS scrutiny and all this stuff because he came out and said this.
Yep.
But someone needs to say it, and I'm so happy that he's using his platform to speak up on it, because everyone, it's easy to say that reparations aren't fair or this not needed, but it's like, no. Right. It is needed because, again, going back to the point of bringing up a subset of your population so that we can all thrive.
Right.
It doesn't have to be one or the other, and that's what's wrong with capitalism in general. Like, I'm a capitalist. Like, I believe we should all thrive and make money. But
part of the history lesson is when slavery was abolished. I mean, I know we did a little bit of the history lesson in one of the early episodes, but when slavery was abolished, there were programs put into place for slave masters who now didn't have free labor to tend to their fields, to support their homes, their plantations. There were programs put into place to help them thrive.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, now you don't have slaves to help you. Let's give you some financial help. So if you think about that, if you just really go back and think about what that means, and black people had to start and figure out life is now a free person with nothing.
No education.
Nothing.
No skills.
Absolutely nothing.
The way it was set up, it was making going back into the fields like
this is
the
not
sun.
This isn't such a great idea.
I'm gonna go back here.
Right. I mean, seriously.
If we knew nothing else.
I mean, and those are facts. That is the truth. So if you think about what that did for the slave masters during that time versus the sheer volume of black people that now had nothing to start with. If you fast forward that till now, look at where we are. We still have this huge disparity, and it's only going to continue to grow. That gap is going to widen significantly. I mean, so if the powers that be think that this company is going to thrive,
to me it makes no sense, right? Like, again, like, we have these government officials that can go on TV and say, black people are criminals, like they're committing all these crimes, they're thieves, they're blah 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 blah. Invest in our communities.
Invest in the community.
Help us thrive and elevate. And in turn, that helps our entire economy.
Yeah, and that's why there's so much messaging around defunding the police. And I know we talked about this before, but people are trying to find, it's like we're clawing and digging and trying to find funding someplace to take away from things like unfair policing and things and these unfair practices, to put them into the community. How about we really put money into have funding streams for the community? Why do we have to figure out where to pull it from and how to revamp this program and how to revamp that one? Why can't we have more dedicated money to really improve the communities that are suffering right now?
And I mean, let's be frank. Let's be very frank. It's because a lot of our government officials are point blank racist.
Yeah,
they are.
Well,
that's the way it is.
There's that.
And one prime example is, Trump creating that executive order to roll back on diversity and inclusion programming in all government agencies.
All government agencies.
Crazy. And most people don't know. When presidents sign these executive orders, it's not like it's just all of a sudden broadcasted on the news and in the media. Like, most people don't even know that just happened. We know because we do diversity and inclusion training.
Right.
But it's crazy.
And when those executive orders are put in place, they become it.
Yeah.
Immediately. Those programs stop immediately. So these programs, there are no more allowed and approved diversity and inclusion programs in the government if they're not approved by the Office of Personnel Management. And if you probably don't know, but if you think about all the work that OPM, the Office of Personnel Management, has to do, they are the clearinghouse for approving executives across the government. They're the clearinghouse for supporting policies and procedures about hiring practices, benefits practices, time and approval and leave. So everything that's happening by way of COVID and flexible work arrangements and everything that's had to shift from a human resources perspective in the government, all of that comes out of OPM. So how ready is OPM to start approving new diversity and inclusion programs, in addition to all the other stuff that they have to do? So that means that the downstream effect is these programs are going to be paused indefinitely.
Yeah.
Indefinitely. No more programs about diversity and inclusion at all across the federal government.
And so that comes back to, Black people doing their due diligence and educating ourselves, especially as business owners, to understand things like that, right? Like what and how are government agencies approving contracts? What programs are being instituted versus taken away and rolled back? And that comes back to, what we said earlier about
understanding the administration,
being adaptable.
Yeah.
And, if we aren't setting ourselves up in a position to succeed, and it's unfortunate that we have to work twice as hard as any other race to actually get ahead, but that is the paradigm that we're faced with.
Yep.
And we have to do those things so that we can thrive.
Yep.
We have to.
Yep. And one thing that I think is important too for us to do, in the absence of having financial support and help, one of the things that I think sometimes as Black people we're challenged with, or it could be looked at potentially as an impediment or a hurdle for our success, is we don't always want to ask our non-Black counterparts that are successful for help.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of willing business owners that will mentor, that will coach, that will assist. Everybody's not racist. There's everybody's not racist.
Everybody is not racist.
Right. And there are a lot of companies that will help. Will point you to the right places to go, to support you, and will offer, like I said, coaching and mentorship in establishing your business. And so I want to make sure that for all the Black people that are listening, I don't want people to walk away with thinking that we're saying talk to Black people, help Black people. It's all about Black people. We're talking about bolstering the economy and supporting Black businesses, but with respect to those Black firms and those companies that need help, ask whoever is doing it well. Yeah. Ask whomever is doing that well. If it's not your Black sister or brother that's doing it well, ask, whomever is out there that's doing it well.
And we've said this before. It's important, for Black people to thrive, for us to have allies.
Yeah.
White allies. And I've said this, one of the first things you asked in this episode was, how have we succeeded at good, and how have we been able to access, certain streams of funding. And I've said this before. I've actually received more support from white mentors.
Right.
I've received more support from white mentors than Black mentors or mentors of any other race.
Yep.
And that's what helped me succeed. And to the point you just made, you can't be afraid to put yourself out there and ask for help.
Yep.
This conversation isn't to say white people are bad. This conversation isn't to say, white people won't help you, or white people are trying to suppress and hold Black people down.
Right.
This conversation is to say, one, Black people, we need to support one another.
Absolutely.
Two, the systems in which our country operates naturally suppresses Black people.
Yeah.
And three, as a Black person, you have to do your due diligence to invest in yourself, to educate yourself, and to be adaptable in a way so that allows you and your community to thrive.
Yeah.
So this conversation is really, it's like throwing a paper airplane, and it goes around and comes back to you.
Right.
It comes right back to you. This conversation, all of that we've said thus far is to say, as a Black person, you have to look in the mirror and really ask yourself how or what you need to do better to succeed.
Yeah.
And if you do that, you will succeed, because this country is set up for all people to thrive if you know how to navigate its systems, if you know how to utilize the resources available, and if you know how to play the game.
Right.
Unfortunately, it is a game.
It definitely
And that's
is.
why all people don't thrive in this country,
right.
because it is a game, and you have to know how to navigate it and play it. But at the same time, if you do, you can thrive.
Yeah, absolutely. You can thrive.
You can thrive.
Those are excellent points.
So, I think ultimately, any person that's watching this episode, has taken away a couple of different points that just says, you gotta grind.
You do.
You gotta grind.
You do.
You gotta
and
grind.
if it hasn't been working for you thus far, think about everything we said and take a different look at it. You look at it again and figure out where you can get help, where you can get support, or where you might need to kind of tweak your approach. Because you can be successful. There are tons of businesses that are successfully thriving. There's a ton of businesses that started this year that are doing well. And, hopefully they'll continue to do well with the right level of support and consumer interest. They'll continue to do well. But look at what your approaches are, and perhaps there's some things that you can do differently so that you can be successful too.
And as a Black person, to that same standpoint, look at what industries we aren't in, right? Like one of the things we said is,
point.
we're in the beauty space,
right?
We're in the digital marketing, advertising space, right? Like, what industries aren't black people in? Because those industries are going to be where large companies and white people are looking to support Black entities.
And the other thing is, so a lot of what I know people do is they look at where Black people are spending money and they're like, oh, I want to be a part of that. And now the market is becoming overly saturated with, hair care products and, entertainment and all these different things. And not to say that there's not still room there, but what you said was really important. Look at where we're not spending money, because there may be some great opportunities for you to tap into that market and thrive.
And that all comes back to adaptability. I'm gonna say it.
Yeah, I like that, adaptability and endurance. I think that's key.
That's it.
That's key. That was great. Dropping gems.
It, y'all. All right. On that note, I think we're done for the day.
Good time.
That was
Black episode. Color scheme.
The Black episode. I put my friend shirt on because we friends.
We are friends.
We're friends.
We are friends.
Black people, we friends.
We are.
White people, we're friends.